What are the key things that you talk to your athletes about, and what can I learn from you in that respect?
Well, I think, we go back to training again, and that's the battleground, so to speak, where they
Hmm.
can gain confidence and learn to suffer and or learn to be okay. It's okay to you want them to feel comfortable being uncomfortable.
Hi, Coach Mike Ritchie here from D3 Multisport. On today's podcast, we're visiting with Coach Brad Seng. Brad has been coaching multiple sports for decades. He's been coaching with D3 for over 10 years. Brad became a professional triathlete in his 30s and has a personal best of 8:55 at the Ironman distance. Brad also coached the CU Triathlon team for a decade and won numerous national titles. Obviously, he's been there and he's done that. He has a ton of knowledge to share. I hope you enjoy this episode. Let's get on to our conversation with Coach Brad.
Hey, Coach Mike Ritchie here from D3 Multisport, and I'm with Brad Seng, the longtime D3 coach, former professional triathlete, and former CU buff coach, long winning streak there of being a national champion. And most importantly, recently, within the last year, Brad has become a dad.
Yes.
And I think that's the most important thing here. Brad, tell me how that's going before we get into
Yeah,
everything
thanks,
else.
Mike. Great to be here chatting with you today. And parenthood is unbelievable, as you know, being a parent. And people always tell you that, oh, you can expect this, you can expect that, or how amazing it is. Which, having 13 nieces and nephews, I always had an appreciation of. But until it's
Yeah,
your own kid, your own
yeah,
child that you're with on a daily basis and seeing that growth and development, yeah, it is. It's unbelievable. It's an amazing
100%.
journey. Yeah.
100%. Hey, so Brad, tell me how you started, not with triathlon, but I know you did sports before that,
Yep.
soccer, and how did that all start for you? And you must have started at an early age.
Yeah, you bet. Athletics and sports, youth sports was always a big part of my life
Mhm.
growing up. And most notably soccer. Started kind of as a knee high to a grasshopper, played some baseball, but never really, was passionate about it or felt like it was like drawing
Mhm.
me in. Did some swimming growing up as well. So soccer and swimming were kind of my athletic thing. So soccer definitely had the priority and played through high school and college, and even in high school, when at the end of high school, I skipped my swimming my junior year just solely to focus on soccer. Went back to it my senior year thinking, well, it's a great way to maintain some cross training, some
Mhm.
in the aerobic capacity. So continued swimming, but soccer was always my jam. And as a kid, had dreams of being a professional soccer player
Yeah,
and going off to play in the MLS someday and being drafted, or
yeah.
making a team or that sort of thing. But had a great time playing at a Division III school in Michigan called Albion College, and post college made it as far as to the competitive men's beer league with a bunch of high school buddies kicking around the soccer ball and playing in a men's league, which was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. And
Yeah.
so when did you do your first triathlon?
So late, did my first triathlon in 2000, the year I turned 30. So
Wow.
definitely had a little bit of a later start in the sport.
But you had swimming as a
After
background, right? So that helped a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, the years of chasing a soccer ball just really lent
Yeah.
itself to developing that aerobic foundation and that aerobic capacity that we need as endurance athletes. I mean, interestingly, like all the years I played soccer, even in college, I really didn't enjoy running. Like we'd have to go out for training runs, and in college at the beginning of the year when we come back in the fall for training camp, there was always this, 2-mile test running test looming over my head. And so I would spend some time at the end of the summer trying to cram train and then just, totally gut myself on this 2-mile test to try to break 12 minutes, which at that time was a big accomplishment for me.
I bet. So how long into triathlon did you realize I'm pretty good at this? I can maybe go pro or, take it to the
Yep.
next level?
So, I'd raced 3 years as a competitive age grouper and went to like USAT age group national
Mhm.
championships and never outright won my age group or won a race at a big level, but went to St. Anthony's triathlon in Tampa, or St. Petersburg was another kind of bigger race that I traveled to when I
Mhm.
was kind of filling this all out, and felt like, with my running background or with the soccer background, running definitely showed proved to be my strength early on, especially. And I was like, that's allowing me to have some modest success. And I really like the personal challenge. It's very different from a team sport, the dynamics of triathlon. And so I felt like, you know what, I'll see if I can, try and earn my pro card. And one thing looking back on it, I think I did it too soon. I probably, in hindsight, we maybe would have waited another year or two, gone to some bigger races, and had some serious breakout success at some of those
Right.
bigger races. As an age grouper, I raced in two triathlon ITU at the time world championships,
Yeah.
short course in Edmonton one year, and then long course in Nice. And those
Wow.
were just amazing experiences for me as an athlete, and as I was still developing. And that kind of planted more motivation as I was able to see the elite fields race at both those venues and those two world championships. And that kind of was a motivation to me, as well as triathlon becoming an Olympic sport in 2000.
Right.
And I was involved. I was still living in Michigan at the time. And I was swimming with the master swim group, and our coach was Sheila Tarmina,
No
who
way.
was on that, initial Olympic team. And she's just an amazing person,
Yeah.
an incredible athlete, in her
Right.
own right, across many different sports.
2 different Olympics and 2
So
different
it was,
teams.
that was part of the whole motivation and behind me wanting to try and pursue racing at the next level, so to speak.
That's awesome. So how long did you end up racing pro?
So ended up racing 12 years,
Wow.
for which focusing mainly on long course events. Being
Right.
an older athlete, I certainly didn't have the swim speed and capability to be really competitive, especially at short course races. I had a swim background, thankfully, which helped me, but I was
Mhm.
never first out of the water. I was never even front pack swimmer
Right.
when I was racing, so.
Yeah. But you had a pretty good your PR. Your PR on the Ironman was 9 or sub.
It was sub 9, 8:55.
Wow,
I was
that's
always
incredible.
chasing that
Yeah.
8:45 to be, try. We're always trying
Yeah.
to snip at it here and there. And once I turned 45, my body started. I could feel my body aging, and it mentally, when I got to that point, and I was working through some injuries, and it just was not as fun as when I first started. And that's when I realized that, I think it's time to look to go, to see where triathlon can take me in a different direction, which ultimately now is coaching, which has been a fantastic
Yeah. So I would
transition.
imagine, obviously trying to race at a high level is hard. And then do it at an advanced age. Advanced age, being over 35, even 38, 40 is hard.
Yeah.
But 45, that's impressive. And I'm sure you learned a lot about the ins and outs of injuries and
Yep.
things now that you can advise your athletes on, like, you don't need to do that much, or
Right.
don't do that work, or don't do, 50 plyo jumps or whatever the number is. You don't need an extra speed workout because that 0.5% you're going to gain is, who knows what'll happen, right?
Well,
Squeaky
exactly. It's
calf
like
or whatever.
the whole adage, less is more. And I really
Yeah.
came to appreciate that as an athlete. And certainly now as a coach is something I encourage my athletes to try and embrace, especially as they're getting ready for key races in the last few weeks. It's easy to get involved in the comparison game. And with social media now, like when I first started racing, there was very little social media. Instagram wasn't even a thing.
Right.
And now it's just like there's just 24/7. You can see what other athletes are doing, but it can be very unhealthy to get
Agreed.
sucked into the kind of the comparison and what I view as the unhealthy, maybe negative aspects of social media.
Yeah, no question. No question. I think that's all right. And I think a lot of us fall into that trap of
Yeah.
comparing. Someone ran 10 miles, I only ran
Right.
8 on a Sunday. And
Right.
did I go out and do those 2, whatever, right? Especially with your
Right.
competition.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So tell me a little bit about coaching. So I think you coached a little bit in the past before triathlon. You coached
Yeah,
soccer?
I've been like almost a lifelong coach.
Yeah.
Once I got into high school and college, like I've been coaching. It's in some capacity, in some form. Initially it was all about soccer and swimming, and coached high school varsity soccer, both girls and boys, for a number of years, and even did, as part of my earning my master's in sports administration, was a grad assistant with the men's team at University of Michigan, which at the time was a club team, but they just right after the year I was there, they transitioned to a varsity program.
Wow.
But that was a great experience. So coaching has always been, kind of in my blood, in my DNA, in
Yeah.
some form and capacity. And even when I was racing triathlon starting out, I was still I was coaching on the side, not to the extent that I am now. But a few athletes, two or three athletes,
Yeah, for sure.
just trying to, and I learned a lot along the way from those experiences. And more recently, coaching the CU team really helped foster and develop, I think, my coaching capabilities.
Well, that's a great segue because that was my next question.
Mhm.
So you coached the CU Buffs for 10 years, was that right?
Yeah, 9.5 years,
9.5 years.
following
Okay,
in
awesome.
the legacy that you built. So we
You
had
won
a
a few.
strong D3 connection for
That's right. It-
quite some time there.
So you won a few times there, right? Three or four
Yep,
times.
that's right. Yeah,
Um, and then, what's your biggest takeaway with, let me tell you, I'm just going to input this a little bit. My first time I had a workout with the team, I had like 30 kids show up for a run.
yeah,
And I was like, I had coached swimming before, 60 kids in the
right,
pool, but they're in a contained area, right? Like it's not a big
exactly.
deal.
Yeah,
And I got 30 kids on a run and I'm like, God, what do I do with all these kids? I mean, it was kind of crazy. So I went and did hill repeats at Scott Carpenter Park and I had them running up and down until they were tired, which took a
yeah,
while. And then I
right,
ran them back, but
yeah,
it was pretty fun, for me getting back into that in-person coaching after a long time of not doing it. But
right,
what was your experience like, coming on and obviously you've done some coaching, but here you are going live again, right? With, a different sport, three different sports, actually.
right.
You're not there for every session every week, but how did you feel in terms of, like what was your goal the first year in terms of just trying to put the team, in some respect, put the team together and do what you wanted to do with it?
Right, really just learning like what is collegiate club triathlon, what's the culture, what's the environment, what are the dynamics. Every
Mhm.
team is different, obviously, and CU has a strong legacy of exceptional of being champions and collegiate club champions for many years, and being at the pointy end of the collegiate club racing scene. And I honestly didn't really know much about collegiate club triathlon when I took over the job. I knew a little bit living here in Boulder. Obviously, you're aware of the CU triathlon team, but I was really surprised by like the wide range of experience and ability. And as a coach, like working with a team back in person, because it'd been a while since I'd coached a team,
Yeah.
it's very different from coaching individual athletes. And you got, to your point, 30 kids showing up at a run session, 40 to 50 kids at a swim, same amount at a bike session, of all different experiences and ability levels. That was a big eye opener, and one of the early hurdles and challenges was finding a way to what you did to successfully create a team dynamic and a plan that's going to cater to the wide range of experience and abilities and the needs of these athletes, from those doing their first triathlon, learning how to swim, showing up on a rusty cruiser beat up mountain bike to one of the first team rides, to those who are already coming in with triathlon experience, racing at an elite level with aspirations to go off and race professionally perhaps,
Right.
and then a
Right.
lot in between. So it was, initially it was just trying to build a framework and a foundation where it was, everyone's going to feel like they belong to something within this team culture.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So, 10 years of coaching, uh, what did you learn from the kids? Because I always felt I'd walk away each week with something like, wow, like a kid would say something to you honestly, and I would take that home and think about it and be like, oh, that's pretty intuitive for a 20-year-old
Right.
or an 18-year-old
Yeah.
first time away from home.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, there was always lessons learned along the way, and as I mentioned a few moments ago, that team and that experience really helped me become a better coach for a variety of reasons. It helped me become more intuitive to be able to see like the body language of these student athletes and what they're dealing with. It's not just about the X's and O's of triathlon. That's probably the easiest part of coaching a team. It's
Yeah.
all the stuff that's going on behind the scenes with relationships, the academic stresses,
Yes.
just the other outside pressures that these young student athletes and college age kids are under. I mean, there's tremendous pressure
Right.
that they have to navigate. And so just dealing with some of that stuff outside of the team planning and the X's and O's and facilitating workouts. The other thing I found challenging, because CU is such a unique program because of its success, and you get these high level performing athletes,
Hmm.
goes back to striking that healthy balance of you want to the team to be competitive every year, trying to on a national stage maybe earn a national title. But you also have to remember that this is a club sport,
Right.
so it's not like you can force these members to be at every single practice and take attendance and that sort of thing. It's very different than say an NCAA sport where they have a much higher level of obligation perhaps. And so I think we managed that kind of somewhere in between. We weren't an NCAA sport. We weren't like a free for all club team. We had a lot more structure and things built in and incentives built in. If someone wanted to race at nationals for us, they had to earn that spot. It wasn't just a guarantee. So that was an interesting process. But to your point, constantly learning, from these kids about their experiences and what they're just studying, like listening to them talk about their academics and the different majors that they have. Like I always thought, like when I was in college, I don't remember hearing these kind of conversations as much.
Right.
I don't remember this high level of majors and academics that my peer group was involved in when I was playing soccer.
I agree. I remember, and I ran cross country in college, and I remember, that was my peer group that I hung out with, and we would have conversations about the latest REM album or something.
Right.
It wasn't about what happened in stats class because no one really wanted to talk about it.
Right.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
So that's a good, that's a lot of good information there, and I think that you're coaching, Olympic level athletes. That's the longest distance they did as a club competitively, right? So then you're also coaching, obviously, for D3, and you've got your own athletes that are, long course, 70.3 and Ironman. So nutrition wise, how would you, I know you know a lot about nutrition. How would you talk to somebody about, calorie intake on, an Olympic distance versus 70.3 versus an
Sure.
Ironman?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as the race distance grows and gets longer, that
Mm-hmm.
having a dialed in fueling and hydration plan becomes exponentially more important. I don't think you can fake an Olympic distance race. I mean, coaching the CU team, this is one other thing I learned is that we had some kids who had raced, junior elite level or junior program doing sprint and draft legal events.
Mm-hmm.
They go off to do their first Olympic distance race and really underestimate the importance of hydration and getting in some calories on the bike in particular, which just totally set them up for a hard lesson to learn on that 10K run. So even at the Olympic distance level, I think there's still an emphasis and should be an emphasis on fueling and hydration. Sprint distance, you can maybe fake it or get away with it by just having a bottle of water or electrolyte drink in your bottle. But up to Olympic distance and then certainly 70.3 and Ironman, that's where you have to start thinking about what, not just having it on board, but like how many calories per hour and what's
Mm-hmm.
the makeup of those calories per hour? How many grams of carbohydrate per hour and salt supplementation, sodium supplementation, which, for sprint and even Olympic distance, you may get away with not having a separate sodium supplement in addition
Mm-hmm.
to your electrolyte drink. Salt supplement, but in 70.3 and Ironman racing, I think for a lot of athletes, that's another aspect to the whole fueling and hydration process.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big puzzle, right? It's always a big
Yeah.
puzzle.
Yeah.
And would you, at CU, I would say the same thing. I've seen plenty of kids crash and burn
Yeah.
due to poor nutrition or, hijinks the night before or whatever.
Right.
But sometimes it was just lack of knowledge, right? Like they
Yeah.
didn't know that they
Yep.
need to take and obviously have a breakfast because some of them would just show
Right.
up and do a race, if you're at Lake
Right.
Havasu or something.
Yeah.
Nationals a little more serious, but get up and do the race. And then what did you have? Your run was, they're just a minute per mile off on their pace, and you ask them what's going on. Well, I had a bottle of water on the bike, and like, what did you have on the run? Oh, I think I had a gel. Like,
Yeah.
okay, but you just burned 1,500 calories over that hour and 45 that you were biking and running, and you
Right.
took in 100 calories. You just burned 2,000 calories. Like your tank is empty.
Yeah,
I
for sure.
don't care how much pizza you ate last night. Like
Right.
you are empty.
Yeah. I mean, there's only so much you can, being young and healthy, you can get away with a certain amount, but in racing, that nutrition and fueling is always a big piece to it.
Right. And then, if you're working with an athlete, do you typically have them write out a nutrition plan before an Ironman or a 70.3, just
Yeah,
so
I
you
mean,
can
that's
kind of have
part
an
of the
idea.
whole training process with those long rides and runs is like,
Hmm.
all right, dial in this fueling and hydration plan, just like you plan to execute on race day. What is it going to be? What products are you going to use? Can you
Right.
stomach Gatorade Endurance, which is a predominant right now product as far as electrolyte drink goes on the courses with, the gels have changed over years. Right now, Martin's a big
Right.
one, but when I was racing, it was all sorts of different things.
Right.
So, being
Power
able
gel,
to
goo.
test out, yeah, exactly. Being able to test out if your stomach can tolerate what's going to be on the course. And if not, then you have to figure out a way to facilitate that for yourself on your bike and then what you're going to carry on the run. So I think it's really those, how I like to emphasize it with my D3 athletes who are racing 70.3 and Ironman, these long course events, is it has to happen in the long training sessions where you're meeting the demands with with intervals, tempo, race specific intervals that you're trying to mimic the work rate you're going to have on race day. Can't necessarily mimic, the specific weather conditions, but, just getting it dialed in and seeing, finding out what products and then how, the quantities, how many grams of carbohydrate per hour. That's a big metric that, in the last few years, I've really been working with athletes on who have, struggled a bit with their fueling and hydration is really trying to figure out, can you take 60 grams or 65? Can we keep inching that up? I mean, I have one athlete who can tolerate up to 110, 120 grams of
Wow.
carbohydrate per hour
That's
on
a
the
lot.
bike.
Yeah.
That's a
That's
wow. That's a huge
500
amount.
calories an hour, right?
Yeah, that's a huge amount. Now,
Yeah.
most people can't,
Right.
but
Right.
it's, but the athletes that, have really honed this in, their performances are reflections of that because of how good they feel in the, midway through the run and at the end of the run in particular in these long course events.
Yeah, I think you're right. I kind of think about what you just said, and I think about, okay, so these people have their nutrition dialed in, and that equals a great race. Or are they super organized and super diligent with their training? They get the training in, they dial the nutrition in, and they've done everything, right, to set themselves up for
Right.
success.
Yeah.
So typically it's those diligent people that'll have success. And I remember one year I went through all my logs of my athletes, and I actually sent them all an email. And I didn't tell them who was who in the email, but I said I had, two athletes that did 99% of their workouts, and one was like an all-American something, and another one was like an all-world something. And I'm like,
Yeah.
it's not by accident, right? Like
Right.
they did all their workouts like they're supposed to. They didn't
Yeah.
overdo it, and just
It's
kept things, the way easy days are easy, hard days are hard,
yeah.
and
Right. It's
that's
not,
another topic for another
what
time.
we do as coaches really isn't rocket science, right? I
Right.
mean, you have to have we're all professional and have an understanding of periodization and, trying to find specific nuances that work really well to help one athlete grow, whereas you need another set of, stimuli, perhaps for another athlete, different set of stimuli. But at the end of the day, to your point, it's about, hard days are hard, easy days are easy, and then being consistent with frequency over time. It's not
Right.
about, massive volume in short little segments here or there. It's that consistency over time that I think really bolsters the durability.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So Brad, you're well renowned for getting your athletes dialed in terms of not only nutrition, not only the physical, but the bigger piece of it, right? It's the mental side. I mean, you can do all the training you want, but if you get to that start line and you think, "Oh my God, I can't swim with 3,000 people," or "I can't
Right.
swim 2 miles," or it's not a down current swim, I'm not going to make it through this. We've all encountered those
Yeah.
athletes, and I know by talking with you and with your athletes that you've done a great job on the mental side of things. What are the key things that you talk to your athletes about, and what can I learn from you in that respect?
Well, I think, we go back to training again, and that's the battleground, so to speak, where they
Hmm.
can gain confidence and learn to suffer and or learn to be okay. It's okay you want them to feel comfortable being uncomfortable.
Right.
And so really trying to stretch them in training without like overdoing it and overextending them. So that's one component, is they gain confidence and are able to practice their mental tools and techniques while they're in the midst of those more demanding sessions, whether it be, a thing of quick imagery before going out for a key session or race, or positive self-talk, having some mantras. One thing that I've learned in working with D3 through our mental skills coach, Will Murray, and the information he has shared with me and our athletes over the years are some great tools and tips that our athletes can take advantage of. And I put that, like I have links to some of his triathlon minute videos that I put in my athletes' plans leading up to a big race, and say race visualization, 10 to 15 minutes. Check out Coach Will Murray's, advice on this.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I was just talking to him last week about redoing some of those videos, and there's some good information in there. Really, really good information.
And the mental side of it, even for me as an athlete, like I knew I wasn't the strongest cyclist, the fastest runner or swimmer, but no one can control my mind. I was in control of my mind and what type of attitude or grit that I wanted to have on race day. And that's one of the reasons I think I, had some modest success in earning some top 10 finishes. Wasn't necessarily because of my physical abilities, but it was like the mental framework I had in the moment. And
Right.
I remember, I think it was 2008 in Kona. I ran a 2:49 marathon, and that was on that day. It was fifth fastest of the day. Now I wish I had a swim and bike split that would have matched that, but I didn't. But I remember just like running through the field in Kona and just going by some of these guys that were literally just much what I viewed as much more gifted physically athletes, had more impressive resumes than and results than I had at that time, and just they were crumbled. Some of them were like on the ground, lying in the fetal position, just in agony, and it was because of poor nutrition, who knows what. But for a lot of them, I mean, I always had the mindset that I'm not going to DNF unless I physically have to, and so I just kept, never know what's happening up the road from you in an Ironman race in particular, and it's such a long day, and I just, my mental kind of fortitude and grit is what allowed me to have some success on race day.
That's awesome.
And
So what did a 2:49 get you for overall? What plan of place?
I think that year it was 32nd or 33rd.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
34th. I should know, but over the years things start to fade. But
that's awesome.
But I certainly didn't have that. I wasn't in that position off the bike.
You didn't have a 420 bike, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. That's awesome. Okay, a couple more questions for you. So knowing that I've known you for a long time now, and I may know a story about something that happened at Oceanside one year. I think it was a pro race.
Yeah, it was one of my first pro races.
The first pro race. Yeah, why don't you tell us that story?
Yeah, early on, when at that time it was actually called Ralph's Half Ironman. It wasn't even right. It wasn't. It was Ralph's was a grocery store chain out there that was the title sponsor of it. But never had. I raced Oceanside a few times, and for whatever reason, never had great days out there. But one year in particular, oh man, it was a kicker at the start. Like as a pro and a new professional, I was like, I got things dialed in. I know how to execute my pre-race routine. And my dad was with me at this race, and he was like, don't you think we should kind of get moving, get over to the venue and let you get set up? And I was like, no, you don't need to. I got this. I just had kind of a pretty low key attitude about it. And sure enough, I did not allow myself enough time on race morning. I was rushed and got to the swim start area, and a volunteer was trying to frantically get my wetsuit up on the pro field. Men were, they were all warming up in the water, queuing themselves up at the start line, and the zipper got stuck. It got jammed. And so this volunteer, she was trying to help out, and volunteers on race day are always, super, super encouraging and helpful. And they just, the volunteer and another volunteer, they just couldn't get it undone. So I had this big, giant open gap from the top of my wetsuit to the bottom that was wide open. The horn went. I was standing on the boat ramp right near the start line area. The horn goes, and I'm like, oh my God, this is not how you want to start a race. So I was like, I got to go. So I just went for it. And of course, that acted like a huge drag parasail, behind me, just pulling on all this water. And that was a miserable way to start a race, and very, very humbling. I just felt like, it was so obvious, because I was like just standing there and the guys are swimming away. And I'm like, I'm going to be in no man's land this entire day.
Did you ever catch up to anybody on the swim?
I don't think so. No, not on the swim. And of course, at that time, the
That's so
women's pro
demoralizing.
field was coming right after it. And I was just counting the number of women, the faster, swimmers that were just blazing by me, thinking, oh, I can get on their feet. And it works for a few moments. But then I was just carrying so much water in that wetsuit. Oh,
Right.
man. And so obviously to this day, I, for myself and my own races, I definitely allow enough time. And I encourage, that's one thing I encourage my athletes. You never want to feel rushed on race morning. So there's a lot you can do to prevent that. Some things, if you get a flat on, on your car driving to a race, or there's traffic, there's some things you can't control, but do what you can just to allow yourself more than enough time on race morning, because you don't want to be stressed and rushed. And I guess in the moment of that, if you do find yourself stressed and rushed, have a mental framework, a mental mindset that you want to use to help get you through it, so you don't panic, and have a minor freak out like I essentially did as I was trying to get this wetsuit zipped up, which probably led to it getting all jammed.
Yeah. And you got it off okay?
Yeah, I don't remember how we got it off. That was the other aspect to it. But yeah, I was able to get it off.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen people with the whole back duct tape because the zipper broke and all
Yeah.
Like, how are they getting that wetsuit off when the swim's over,
Right.
Someone's got to have a scissor or a box cutter to get it off, right?
Yeah.
Just kind of funny. But, in the moment, you're very thankful that that's not happening to you, and your wetsuit works properly, because you see that and you realize how much stress that person's going through.
Right,
So
for sure.
I'm sorry to hear you went through that, but it makes a good story. So
yeah, that's part of racing. It's a humbling journey, but we learn from these experiences.
Totally. All right. Well, thanks for being on with us. We really appreciate the time, and it's been great talking to you. We'll catch up again.
You bet. Thanks, Mike.
All right.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Trust the Process. If you have a question on anything related to triathlon, please send me an email at mike@d3multisport.com. We'd love to hear from you. Make it a great day.